How great would it be to get up close and personal with the beauty industry heroes we love and admire, and to ask them, how did you learn to do what you do? I'm Chris Baran, a hairstylist and educator for 40 plus years, and I'm inviting all our heroes to chat and share the secrets of their success. Well, welcome to this week's Headcases. Today's guest is a global educator for Redken, a multi-NAHA winner and nominee. She's trained thousands of stylists throughout the U.S., Europe, New Zealand, and Australia. Her audiences range from in-salon to stages of thousands. The industry touts her as one of the top colorists, and the kicker is she cuts a mean head of hair as well. She prides herself in creating unique looks that are wearable, and while being a celebrity, she hones her craft in the salon, where she is creative director for Dop Dop Salon in New York City. This is my second fellow Canuck to chat with this week. She is a true teacher, mentor, an inspiration, and most importantly, friend and a member of my family. So let's get into this week's headcase, Lori Zabel. Lori Zabel, it's a pleasure to have you on Headcases, and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being had. We're starting off so humbly here when, as I introduction, Lori qualifies in our family as daughter. She has daughter rights in our family. So just so everybody knows that we are that close to one another. But, to me, I think it's really, it's muy important. And I have to say that you're the second person on this week that was actually a Canadian. And for those people listening or whatever, I can call her a stubble jumper. And it's no other meaning than we both came from the Saskatchewan area. And that just means that, the stubble was something that they had in the wheat fields and blah, blah, blah. So we call all Saskatchewanites are stubble jumpers. So welcome, stubble jumpers. Great to have you here. Have you got your bunny hug on?
I do, actually. Yes. That just means that it has pockets and it goes over your head, that kind of thing. We live in those. Yeah. Only people in Saskatchewan call it that, though.
That's right.
Nowhere else in Canada, even. Yes.
No, they don't know it as a bunny hug. It's just it's a hoodie. That's all it is. So let me ask you this: where have you had any interesting? We had Sean on just this last few days ago, and we asked him about if there was any interesting things that happened with your either Canadian accent or Canadianisms that got you in trouble, or just got you that kind of the RCA dog in the headlights or in the gramophone going, "Arr," and wondering what the hell you were talking about. Was there ever any of those?
Yes. Well, when people hang around with me, they go back home. I've had this, I'm trying to remember who it was. They would, we'd spend time together when I lived in New York and stuff. And when they would go home, their husband said, "Did you spend a lot of time with Lori this week?" And they'd be like, "Why?" And I'd always say, "Because now you ask everything in a question-like form." And so I was like, "Oh, yes. So that's definitely a thing." When I lived in Australia too, so they used to have me say certain things all the time in Australia just to see how I would say it. And then I'd try and imitate them. And that, of course, was even worse. So, yeah. And then when I moved to the States after being in Canada and then Australia and then moving to the States, my accent apparently is so messed up that at the beginning of every class or everything I do to introduce myself, I have to say, "I'm Lori Zabel. I'm Canadian, lived in Australia, lived in New York, now live in San Diego." And I literally had to say that in the first few minutes, Chris, because about 20 minutes into meeting somebody, they'll say, "You're Irish."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Pardon?" And they haven't listened to anything I've said. They've only tried to figure out what my accent was.
Yeah, where the hell are you from? I remember doing a show with Brian Smith, and we were on stage cutting, and he said, and for those of you who don't know Brian, he's Scottish. He's been here in America for 30 some odd years, and his accent's still as thick as when he left. But he was on stage and he was going, "Yeah, I'm going to do this wee haircut, and And on the top, I'm going to use my texture scissors and going to make it a wee bit furry. And, it's like furry on the top. And everybody in the audience had this blank look on their face. And I stopped and I said, Brian, let me translate. He says, he's making the top look a bit furry. Anyway, so we all have our, I would say that we're like two countries separated by the common language. So our accents are different, just so you know, for anybody listening and watching here. But Lori, I want to take a wee step back. Now, did I say a wee step? I talked about Brian for 2 seconds and I said
2 seconds and you're right in there.
I have this theory, as you well know, that I think that people either one knew they wanted to be a hairdresser from day one when they were kids, or they fell into the profession. Which was it for you?
I fell into it. I was signed up, actually. Yeah. So I didn't even...
As in a sentence, or was this part of probation?
Yeah. In Saskatchewan, when you're in trouble, they just send you to
I'm doing community time. I just got signed up for hairdressing.
It explains a lot about the two of us, doesn't it? Yeah. That's your punishment is. No, I was interested in a school that had a bunch of classes offered, and some of them sounded interesting. And so I asked the school to send me some papers, and I needed a student loan back then. And so my mom said, ask your uncle to help you fill out the paperwork. So I did. And of course, the school sent me every curriculum they had. And so my uncle, of course, filled out every paper they sent. And then I went to school, and I had no idea. And they just said, report at this time of the day and this day. And there I was in hair school. And
so your uncle actually picked, he picked the profession.
Yeah. But not on purpose. I think he just, and I think I've only cut his hair maybe once or twice in his life, the poor thing. But yes, it wasn't for his own benefit. He didn't sign me up. Yeah. So before I knew it, I was in hair school and I was getting good marks. So I just stayed.
Yeah. Okay, good. So, and to give props, that school was out of Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. Yes. And that was our good friend, Harvey Moran.
Oh my gosh. I just owe so much to him for helping me so much in school and after school. I mean, I wouldn't have met you without him. Right. So, you could blame him or you can thank him. We'll see.
Or vice versa.
Right.
That to that point, I remember going in, and he had one of those schools where when you have an owner that really cares about the kids, mm-hmm. and will do anything for them, and both Harvey and Trevor, Harvey and Trevor, they were always in there. Whatever the kids needed, they would do. So I thought that was great from there. So now you got out of school. And then what? Because the transition I want to find here is we have so many people in our industry that get out of school and then they find a path. And your path mm-hmm. went down some of theirs where you went into a salon. But I'd like to know mm-hmm. what the path was and then how you chose to upgrade and what happened there?
You mean upgrading was when I met you? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, well, I don't know if that's upgrading or downgrading. I don't know what that was.
No, that definitely was. So I, even when I finished school, I don't think I thought I was a cosmetologist. So I didn't apply for a hairdressing job, but somebody called me and said, hey, your teacher, Harvey Moran, said that you'd be great and I should hire you. And I was like, I don't even have a resume. They said, oh, you don't need one. It's fine. You just come in and I'll hire you. And that was Laddie James Weslowski in Saskatoon.
Oh, yeah.
And he was great because he did competitions and things like that. So I would go to hair shows and follow him around and, do things like that. And then I worked in Regina at a salon called Butterfly Salon. Now the woman that worked there, I don't even know where she is these days. Christine Motil, she mm-hmm. was one of the toughest people in all of Saskatchewan. So I thought, well, I'm going to go and work there because I think I need to learn some things. And
Lori, by tough, we didn't mean she wasn't in MMA. She was just a very strict. She was a strict boss.
Yes, she was a very strict boss. I mean, yes. We won't go there, but
Yep.
yeah, no, she wasn't in that, but she was known as being tough. And again, Harvey helped me get a job there. He's like, okay, well, if that's where you want to go. And then I had a client say to me one day, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Your hair." She said, no, it was he. It is him. He was a doctor. And he said, well, yeah, but you don't have any attachments here. You don't have any kids. You don't have any, thing tying you to this city. Why don't you get out of Saskatchewan? And so he was the one that suggested that Victoria would be a good idea. And I was like, oh, yes, I've heard about this guy, Chris Baran, and he's the best hairdresser in all of Canada. And just so you know, that was your reputation.
Well,
And
that's what I started.
yeah, you started the rumor, and it spread very well. And I thought, oh, he's from Saskatchewan. He's like, stubble jumper, as you said. And for sure he'll hire me because I am as well. And not realizing you didn't even own the salon then. So, but anyway, long story short, I went all the way to Victoria and tried to look you up. Well, that didn't work. So I called the school and talked to Harvey, and I said, listen, I'm trying to find that Chris Baran guy. Do you know what his salon's called? And they said, well, it's Christopher J's, but he's here right now. You were actually at the school that day. You'd never been to the school when I was there. Just saying.
I didn't go because you were there.
Yeah. Probably. Yeah. And so anyway, long story short, then I ended up begging for a job, and Greg Young, who bought the salon from you because you were traveling so much at that time and everything.
And props to Greg.
Oh yeah,
great guy.
Amazing guy. He'll tell you that he hired me because I was wearing really cool pants. I had palazzo pants on, and they weren't quite in style at the time. I'm trying to remember. I think I paid $3 for those things. But anyway, it's a sideways story as we squirrel all over the place, right? Anyway, so then I ended up with you. I didn't even meet you until I think probably 2 weeks into working there. By then I was like, whatever, Chris Baran, you never even hear. So not true. Then you adopted me right after. I guess you thought I needed that. So that was good. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's our paths. And just so everybody knows here that I don't know if this is called nepotism or whatever, but, I don't have Lori on here because she is of that quality in our family and she's a part of it. I do that because she is probably one of the most amazing colorists. And I think the hardest part, Lori, is that sometimes when you're christened, and I'm right now, for those of you who are watching, I'm doing the night thing, like I one hand left, one hand right, like you would know what that was. And I'm knighting you as not only a great colorist, but you're one hell of a hair cutter. And sometimes people don't do both nowadays, and if they don't, they don't feel as comfortable with one as the other. So, and by that, the reason why I'm going there is sometimes people have just average clienteles, but your clientele is always very unique and very diverse. And when I say diverse, I'm not talking about societal diversity. I'm talking about most of the people that you do have really cool haircuts. You do very quick color techniques, but what advice could you give to people about how to attract that kind of clientele?
Well, that's a good question. I think if you speak to people about what they could have rather than asking in their chair, what would you like? Because I try not to ask that question. What do people like, unless it's what's in their coffee, and then I never remember when I get to the coffee machine anyway. But instead of asking them, what they would like to do today, and I hear that so much when you go into a salon. People say, "So what would you like to do today?" And I'm like, no. Yeah. I let people know what I think they should have. If I ask them anything, I ask them, what don't you like about your hair? Because they don't know their possibilities.
Yeah.
So if you ask them what they don't like, you can solve those problems. And then also you get to do what you want to do. You know what would look better on them. But you know that if they don't want their hair touching their face, you're not going to give them that big sweepy fringe kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So I think, you know, but to attract them into your chair, I think you have to ask the people who you do fun things on their hair, ask them to send their friends and family
Yeah.
that also like to do that, because that's how you get clients. Or, I mean, you know, we're Canadian, so we like to sit at a bar, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, I sit at a bar and talk to people all the time, and that's how I pass up my card all the time. Or, you know, if I see people with cool hair, I'm like, I really like your hair, I'm a hairdresser, and I give them a card, not to steal them from somebody else. I like their hair, but if they're like, oh, you know what, that's funny, I'm looking for a hairdresser, or maybe just someday they need one. So I think, yeah, I don't know. I go round and round in circles about that. I'm not really sure, Chris.
Yeah, well, you know what? I think you hit on a really important part there was the, you know, and I think that, you know, is it called stealing when you're getting a hairdresser from somebody? Nobody's going to leave somebody if they love what they're having. So I don't believe that anybody steals clients. People will put up with you longer. And it's a fact nowadays that men actually put up with somebody even if they don't like the haircut, if they just like the relationship. But women, on the other hand, are always shopping. And the reality is like what I love about your work and what you do is you just it's great work, and then you just say, here's my advertising. And if people are doing long, and please understand, for everybody watching and listening now, you know, if my specialty in cutting is going above the shoulders and up, and that's where I bill myself. And I have nothing wrong with people that do long hair and do balayage and do all of the long hair things. But if that's all you're putting out in your work, in your social media, that's all you're going to get. And if that's what you want, awesome. But when the tide turns and it goes back to short hair, are you equipped? And I think that's what I love that you do is you get people in and out fast, you know, in your color technique and your cutting technique. And you're always thinking of one other little thing. Whenever I watch you cut hair, it's just, you know, it's leaving a piece of hair or doing something out that makes it Lori-esque as opposed to just traditional work.
Well, I mean, thank you for that. But I think, you know, I learned, you know, my skill of hair cutting from you. And I say that because you were developing compass cutting back when I was assisting you. And I remember somebody saying to me at one point in time, not to me, just in general, saying, well, Lori is not the best hair cutter, but anybody will sit in her chair because of her personality. And I thought, oh, and I was like, oh, that was like a backwards compliment. So then I knew I needed to learn how to cut hair. And I was left-handed. Okay, I'm still left-handed. And so you didn't change that about me. But you helped me get my first pair of left-handed shears, right? And so anyway, you taught me how to cut hair in the mirror. Remember that? And then you would always leave pieces and things like that. And then I would do your clients when you were out of town, and they'd say, I don't know what he's doing with this piece. I don't know if you want to cut it off. And I'm like, oh, no, don't cut that off. And then I went to work with, Benny Tognini, who's also one of your best friends. Yes. And so when I went to work with him, he always left a piece here and there everywhere. So I do that kind of now too. You pick up things from your mentors, right? And so, and people who trained you in things. And I always call those personality bits now. So my clients actually love that. And, you know, when I have new clients come into my chair, they're usually recommended from somebody else I already do, which to me is the best referral. And when they come in, they sit in my chair and they say, oh, I washed my hair. If they're getting a color, especially, I washed my hair already. I was told to. And I'm like, okay. And then they said, and I'm just supposed to sit here and just let you do your thing. And I'm like, fantastic. My clients train people. So I don't even have to do it, Chris, anymore. I don't even have to say what I want to do on their hair. Like, I mean, I do kind of say what I'm going to do on their hair, but I don't have to convince them to do something different. They sit in my chair because they know that. So you kind of build the reputation. And I think that's good. Even in the salon, you know, when I work at Dop Dop salon in New York City, which is amazing, been there for 22 years. must have started when I was 8 because I
Yeah,
started
I think you were
hairdressing
6.
when I
I
was
think
5.
because I remember
Yeah,
I was,
yeah, yeah.
I was 90 then. Yeah.
Whatever, 90. And where were we? What was I talking? Oh, I know. When the staff ask me for a haircut, they never ask me for a trim. Like the standard, like saying
Mm-hmm.
around the salon is never ask Lori, like you don't ask Lori for a trim. You to waste her time. And I kind of take that as a compliment. That's not
Mm-hmm.
a bad thing. You know, if you want something different and you want to let me go crazy, then
Yeah.
sit in my chair.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's just part of it being a designer, isn't it? It's like that's
Mm,
one thing I found that if you can set yourself up as a designer, and as people, if you go to a clothing designer, this is a standard thing that I say to people is that if I get when you're thinking and talking to a hairdresser who is the person that's going to design, yes, there should be an exchange of ideas, but if somebody said you were going to somebody that was, pick your favorite designer, and if you said here's $25,000, and you go to that person and you say, what would just say here you can only have one outfit.
mm,
What would you say to that person? And 9 times out of 10 they'll say, well, what would you think? And yet hairdressers as a whole, they'll just think that, well, they should say, well, what do you want? And you can bridge that just by in your consultation and just saying, now look, I know you may have something in mind, but blah blah blah, and then give them some suggestions. And that's one thing that I've always seen that you do is
mm.
you'll give them an idea, give them a suggestion or a feeling of the way you want the haircut, whether it's straight or curly or whatever. How do you is that something that was ingrained in you? Did you have to figure that out? What was and what would you say that there is a pattern that you would use that hairstylists out there, particularly young kids trying to get into the game, that they should do?
Mm. Well, I think it's all in your questions, right?
Yeah.
I think for me when I started hairdressing, it was the 80s, right? The late 80s, and then in the 90s also we went to so many hair shows. And so when I'd get back, I just assumed that whatever crazy things, and I mean there were some crazy things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. There were crazy things that people would do, and I would come back and I'd think, well, that's what I learned at the show. That's what I should be doing on my client.
Mm-hmm.
So I just assumed that that's what they wanted. I have changed the flavors because, back in the day, you'd put like black and red and burgundy and blue and, that kind of thing everywhere. Still love that. But, maybe it was just different flavors of chocolate and marshmallow and that kind of thing instead. And so I didn't know not to explain, just assume that. But I think also, I think most people get into hairdressing because they want to do something different. At
Mm-hmm.
least I did. I didn't, once I got into it, it wasn't a plan. But when you get into hairdressing, you don't want to do I would hate to do the same thing every day, all day
Mm-hmm.
long. Like if I have to do more than one long layer in a day or in a week, Chris, I'll ask I work with an associate, right? And they'll say, did you tell them your name? Or if it's a new client, they'll come in and they'll say, oh, your new client's in your chair. Do they have long layers? Yeah. Like, did you tell them your name? No. Okay, go tell them you're Lori. You could do it. They're like, what? And I'm like, you see me do the long layer. Just do it. Because I don't want to do it. I know it sounds horrible, but I don't know if that answers your question. I think just know that people sit in your chair because you suggest. All they can do is
Yeah.
say no,
Yeah. Bingo.
right?
Bingo.
But at least you spark the
Yeah.
thought, because then if you tell them what you'd like to do and why, the whole time they're doing their hair between when they see you now to like 6 or 10 weeks or however long down the pike, they'll come back in and say, you were saying about that, blah, blah, blah. Maybe we should do that.
Yeah.
So, if that's the worst thing that could happen, it's great.
Yeah. Plant the seed, right? So
Yeah.
how did the transition to education? So how did that happen?
Well, you signed me up. Yeah. I have nothing to do with anything I've ever done.
Well, but the point is, is that I remember we did that. We did that with all of the people. I mean, I can remember with Jeff,
Right.
with Jonah, with Greg, and we just
Yeah.
said if we were doing a show, you're going on stage. And I remember, and I think it was Jonah Boyer. He said that look at he said I'm an apprentice. What am I doing on stage? And we said to him, look at you with your training, you know as much and more about trend that's going on than some of the people that are out there right now. So you're qualified. Just get out there and tell them what you're doing. So sometimes that's all it is to have a start.
Yes. And, I mean, I don't know that I would have I would have gone along with you to shows and things like that, which I probably already did at that point. But I don't think I knew I'd be good at it. So it's really great to have somebody who believes in you that you can do it. I remember you saying to me, oh, I signed you up for this class, blah, blah, blah. You'll learn to be a Redken artist, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay. You said, I said, do you really think I can do that? And you said, yeah, that's kind of why I signed you up. And I said, okay. You said, so do you want to go? And I said, well, didn't you already sign me up? And you said, yep, good talk. And
the point, here's the point is that everybody that's out there knows you, knows what you've done, and you certainly have climbed the mountain since you've been there. So, but I want to just take you back then, not the shows that maybe you and I did together, but is there any interesting Canadian shows that you did as Lori Zabel or US shows that you did that really stood out as a great and interesting learning experience? I mean, something that was interesting that happened, you either had to work your way out of it or an interesting thing that happened at shows.
Well, okay, so it wasn't in Canada or the US, it was actually Mexico, and it was hysterical. So then at that point in time, most of the time now when I do hair color, for instance, on stage, I mock hair color. It's pre-done, and then I just mock it, whether it be a model or a mannequin. But before I learned that lesson, we were doing this amazing show in Mexico. And I mean, glorious people I worked with, fantastic. The whole thing was amazing. There were some really crazy points in it that I'll leave out for the moment. But the on stage, well, first of all, I was wearing this Charlie Brown headset so that I could have translation with my show partner, which was hysterical. But I'm doing hair color on stage live, and I'm using high fusion, which was a really bright color, but it would take a good 20 minutes to process, right? So I'd put it on, but we only had so much time before they would come back on stage. And so I explained to the team, leave it on for as long as you can, then rinse it off, and then, bring her back on. So they did, and so they rinsed her off. They came back. Now you have to imagine Latin hair, curly, everything, like a ponytail,
the size of your arm.
Oh my God, yes. And so she comes back on, and her hair is dripping wet. It's a brand new show, and it was we had these brand new towels that they sent on stage with this girl, and the towels were never washed before, so the towels literally, as you can imagine, just repelled the water. So she comes out on stage. I've got 5 minutes on stage, and she's got this much hair, and it's sopping wet, and you can't see the color. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because there's no way I can get her hair dry in 5 minutes, right? And I'm thinking, sweating. I'm also wearing a vinyl jacket. That's part of the story I'm going to leave out for now. Yeah. And oh my God, I'm just what do I do? So I'm okay, so let's get the rewind. So I pull out styling product, and I do this, and it used to web and everything, and made this big deal about how I'd set her hair and everything. If you want to see her color, you can see her later, knowing full well, Chris, none of those people were going to be back in my classroom again for the rest of the day.
Thinking.
But just telling them, this is what the color will look like when it's all dry, and it'll be amazing. And thank you so much. And then whatever I had to do to wrap up and, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, then and there, when I got off stage, I was yeah, okay. So then we had, never do live color on stage again. And so, yeah, I don't think I have since then, I think. So, yeah, you can imagine it's like you're just sweating and like dying. And, oh, my goodness. Yeah. So that was one of the things, like me on my own without you and things like that. That was probably one of the big ones I remember.
I can remember being at a show, and this was a Canadian show when I was first starting off, and that's when everything was perms in the 80s. And I remember wrapping this perm on stage because that's what you did. And then you would give an instruction. We had, every time you went to a show, you had new people, and sometimes they would be people that, whatever, they'd never worked with you before, and they just follow the instructions you gave them. And so I remember doing the perm wrap on stage, or what was there, whether it was done or not. And I remember putting the perm solution on. And then I looked around, and then I helped her out of the chair, and I said, so I want you to time this for X amount of time, and then I want you to neutralize it. And I remember that then they brought her, I think she was coming back on for the next show, and she walked on stage, and I took the towel off, and I went to comb through her hair, and the comb more or less stuck in her hair because it was, and I was... And so I remember I just turned her around and I just said, "Are you okay with going short?" And she said, "Yeah, whatever you want to do." And so I just cut all her hair off. And I said, when you're doing this kind of a shape, you don't necessarily have to comb the hair out. You just take one. I think I had that same vinyl outfit on, but I took all of her hair off. And she had this, it came out really cute. I think it may have been the start of a pixie. I don't know. But the point was, after I got off stage, I said, "What the hell happened to her hair? It was in really good shape." And they said, "Well, you said to neutralize it." So we put the neutralizer on right over top of the perm solution. So by the time they gave it to me, this hair was just absolute mess. But it's some of those things that you had to work yourself out of in those days. So you learn out very quickly. Be more consistent. When this comes off, you're going to do X, Y, and Z, and that's it. Mm-hmm. Good stuff. So
that's why you used to take me on the road with you.
Yes,
right?
Yes. So what would you like going through the game that you went through in education? And it's changed a bit now. You sometimes you don't always have that person that will help you get the leg up into that. But with somebody that was out there right now listening to Lori Zabel, and they watch you on stage and say, "I want to be like Lori Zabel," what were the things that you would tell that person, that young person, or that person that wants to go and get into education? What would you tell that person to do?
I would say go to everything you can go to education-wise, and volunteer for as many things as you can. I remember volunteering many times for just to pass perm papers, do a shampoo, just be there, like clean up, rinse color bowls, any of the things that sound like really crap jobs. And I was a stylist, I was a hairdresser, had clientele and everything, but I would go so that I could be around the most amazing people. I mean, the people I've met, Chris, oh my goodness, just, and been able to be backstage with and things. When I started, there wasn't social media. I mean, we didn't even have a computer, right? So, right. To volunteer and do things like that. Now, you might think, well, I don't make any money doing that. Nope, you don't. But it's more valuable than anything I could have ever done, just seeing what they would do. And when you show interest in doing something, somebody always wants to share that, right? Yeah. So, just being there. I remember also, yes, many times I was thrown into the show to be a model back then. And I mean, you did that to me more than once. Ruth Roche did. I don't remember who else would do it. Everybody. And even when I was in cosmetology school, if I would go and get my hair done at the hair shows and be a model there so that I could be behind the scenes and see what they were doing. Yeah. And to me, that was like the best education, just being around those people. Everybody always says, if you surround yourself with amazing people, you're going to be that next amazing person. Mm-hmm. And I think that it just rubbed off for me. And Yeah, there were many times. I remember one time modeling for you at Symposium, and that was the first time I ever got paid at Symposium. And we used to do a lot of, you know, I did all the wig work and all the color work and stuff like that with you on all the prep days, and then the show days I would do makeup for all the artists. And then that one time, the one year, I nearly went into anaphylaxis, if you recall, the day before, because somebody bleached my hair, and not their fault. Just I'm allergic to bleach, and so. But a few weeks later, I got home and I'm like, I got $75, and you're like, oh yeah, that's right. I signed you up to be a model. Fantastic, that was great. But would I do it without being paid that $75? Well, I did. I didn't know I was getting paid. So if if you really want to do something, get yourself in there, sign up, do it for free. Your education that you will get from it will more than pay for itself in your career.
Yeah. This episode is sponsored by the Salon Associate Accelerator from trainersplaybook.com. Are you struggling with the time and cost of associate training? Do you feel like your salon is running you? We'll get your associates on the floor, all with 90% less time from you, so you can get back to building your business. Get them world-class design, finishing, color, and client care skills they'll use every day for the rest of their career, while you focus on realizing your vision. Go to trainersplaybook.com and get the Salon Associate Accelerator. And now, back to the show. Yeah, let's face it, there is going to be people that are out there that are going to get into the industry, and they might become, if you looked at Benny Tognini, he always had, his hands were always swollen because he refused not to work with color, etc. Yeah. That was part of his job. But what did you do to help you to overcome that allergy or the allergy? Because you still do. You're magnificent color. You're using bleach all the time. Mm-hmm. How did you learn to master working with it and not get reactions?
Well, I still do. Duct tape works really well. When your hands are breaking open, that's a thing. I've learned to be very, very neat. I don't know, and please don't say it. Don't say it. When I first started working with you, I wasn't the neatest colorist. No response there.
I know nothing.
Face, yeah. And I know nothing. And I learned that I had to be very particular and very precise. And yeah, you can have color all over and things like that. But also working with somebody who can shampoo for me and things like that. If I can, that really is the best, because it hasn't gotten any better. One day I'll invent bleach without whatever it is that I'm allergic to in it.
So but the point is you still do color, even though you're allergic. Maybe you had developed an allergy to it, and you're going there, right? So I'm going to kind of take that in now. Now, how you went down the path of where you were in the salon. Now you're on the road all the time, mm-hmm. and let's face it, you've been to, God knows how many countries that you've taught in, but what I love about when you teach is you're Lori, the human being, etc. And then but now you've also, let's face it, you're NAHA winner. And I want to go down that path. And I'd like to go a little bit different than some people do about, yes, it is about putting a collection together. But why do you think that the average person, even if it's not for NAHA, what's the benefit of them doing a photograph of that? And I'm not talking just social media. I'm just talking about doing a proper photograph or a proper shoot that you do for your salon or for some kind of editorial work or whatever. Why do you advise that they do it? And if so, what were things that you would tell them that they should do about their collection?
Well, why would you do it? Is a really good question. I don't think I've actually done what I should do with a lot of my collections and things like that. Like, you know, when you're done with them, often you're so hard on yourself, you look at it, you think, yeah, whatever, okay, I'm done with that, and you don't think about it anymore. Should send it to magazines, should send it to different things. But I think if you were just going to do it in general, I think it really pushes you to be creative, but also I think you can see something different in the photograph than what you see in real life. You know, just to push yourself to be creative. If you want to do something different, okay, so if you want to do hair like I do, say, for instance, and maybe you don't, but you want to do something that's super creative, it's a great outlet to be able to do that, because you can, you know, you don't have any, you know, it's a photograph, it's no limits, it's, you know, and sometimes, you know, you look at it, you think, oh, that's not how I expected it to turn out. But you've got to try it just to try it. I think it's just something different than what you do every day. It you know, it pushes your creative buttons so that you know, maybe do that with your clients behind the chair as well, I guess.
I think. Well, I think what I heard you say is that, you know, like everybody's. You know, I love the fact that Lori Zabel is a brand. You know, and you know that if you're going to go to a Lori Zabel class, you get Lori Zabel hair. That's what you go there for, and you go there for the inspiration in that. And I think that if you take your work, and I know that you're always hard on yourself and your work, even though your work is incredible. But if people listening and watching right now think about whether even if you don't like the work as much, like I don't think you or I or anybody has ever done a shoot where it went, oh, well, that turned out exactly like I wanted it to. But when you put that on a wall and you have people that your clients in your salon that walk by and they go, that's amazing, who did that? And you go, oh, well, you know, I did that, or Lori over there did that. They go, really? And that sets your brand. That's part of your branding that make people respect what you do. You know, it's you know, whether you're doing a redhead or whatever that's walking down the street, or an amazing haircut down the street, those things send people to you. Not necessarily the ones that, like, I've seen you when some of the work that you do. I remember watching you cut a curly headed bob, and you got to the front and you left just those curly pieces out the front. You know, somebody else that's walking down the street may have curly hair, and they don't necessarily they're not going to cut it into the bob, and they're not going to want the long piece cut out, but they say, damn, who did your hair? Because if you did that, you could do that. You could take care of my longer hair or my bob that's to the shoulders, and you can style my hair. You know, those are the things that we always have to think about our brand.
Yeah, well, it's exactly that, you know, doing something different than what you do every day, which I never want to do. I don't want to do the same thing. But also your clients, they may not, you know, you could have like no change Betty, right? That doesn't want anything different. But if she knows that you can do something different, then she'll send other people to you, right? Like, people want to know that you know how to do it, even if they don't want it.
And and if somebody was planning, let's say whether it's in your salon or you're going to go, you want to say, look, I'm going to take a risk. And there's a young kid that's out there and says, hey, you know what? I've got some groovy friends that are going to let me do whatever I want to do. And I'm going to take a shot at entering a competition. Pick one. What should they do? What should they think about? Especially, and I want you to focus on, particularly on the color side, because we spent a lot of time talking about cutting. Mm-hmm. But what should you focus on with color?
Well, I think, for me, definitely you have to have a good team if you're going to do not to do the color specifically, but have a good team for the whole photo shoot thing. But also because I'm not very good at all of the other things, even though I've done all of them. if you're thinking about color and what it's going to look like in the photograph, for me, I think of some contrast.
Mm-hmm.
So I often think of, okay, so there should be at least 2 levels of difference in the color, or it should be a very warm and very cool. It shouldn't look like you put all colors on at the same time, and nothing against like all the rainbow hair and different things like that. It's not really my style. What is, but if it is, what is it that is like the focus of that? Like, instead of it just being like all of it, usually when you look at something that really attracts you to something, it gives you like a feeling, but also there's something to focus on. There's something to look at. And so, it has to all go together, but it also, yeah, I guess it just has to have like a total look in it as well. And then, for me, honestly, Chris, most of the time color can be super, super simple. And we try to make it too difficult. And really, if it's super shiny, or matte or whatever it is, but if it's really well finished, like the finish on it is really, it doesn't have to necessarily be smooth. It could be wavy, curly, any of those things. But what is that like? It has to, that detail really is important.
Yeah. And what
I don't know. I feel like
here's
I'm
what I
all
would
over the place.
suggest people do is look up Lori's work, go to NAHA, and look at kind of the work that she's done on there, and in particular in the color side. And yes, because you've won in haircutting and you've won in color. So, but go in your color work. What's your process like before you even think about the color? What do you do to get your ideas for the direction that you want to go into a collection?
Well, it's a lot of research, and most of my inspiration comes from fashion and from looking at not the hair that's happening in fashion. I don't want to do what somebody else has already done, but I like to look at patterns, and what the era is, what the color palettes are. Kind of, it gives me that all the way around type of feeling. Like, I've been known to even just look at like something like my jacket and come up with like, oh, you do a wider stripe and a narrow stripe and a little pattern. And so, yeah, just looking at that pattern. Honestly, when I come up with these things, as you well know, it's a painful process for me because I'm trying to reinvent the wheel, and and so, and I obviously can't yet. But yeah, so I love looking at, the overall look of what's happening in fashion and kind of storyboard that and look at all of it. And then of course it's try and throw away a lot of things. And then, actually I should never say that. We never throw the things away. You keep all of those because some random weird thing, and it's happened in one of my collections before, you pull out and you go, oh, this is really great. Chris Sorby did that to me once. And so and then things just happen from there. So even the stuff you don't like, sometimes that ends up being the key that unlocks the whole rest of it.
And so I want to go a little bit deeper on when you say a pattern, because I've worked with you often enough. I know I remember the one time things weren't working and you just looked at your cuff, and your cuff on your jacket had this pattern in it and you just shifted on the fly. And so tell us about like, what do you do when you see it? And so many people might have, okay, it's a pattern in your cuff. It's the look in your jacket you're wearing right now. And people that are just listening right now, she's got like wide stripes and narrow stripes on her shoulders. But how do you apply that to the hair so it just doesn't look like stripes on a cuff, etc.? How do you do it and apply that?
Well, so I love to work with head shape. And so I never, many times I do put it right in the center so that when you move it one way, it looks one way. When you move it, another way, it looks a different way. But I like to work with the head shape and think about like, where is that hair going to live? How's it going to play? And then you work with like maybe smaller lines or bigger lines, and then contrasting colors, maybe a really cool, a really dark, or at least a few levels different from each other, so that shows up, especially on a photograph.
And you know, and I noted just a minute ago you said that you were talking about so much of what you do is research, and I really believe that most people don't realize how much time goes into actually developing a collection. You're not just, pulling it out of your backside and here it is and ta-da.
No, and the research is really, you spend a lot of time prepping for it, and all of the stuff that you keep trying not all of it ends up being a part of your collection. In fact, sometimes none of it. I mean, my first collection had nothing to do with anything I practiced. But what I did figure out was what I didn't want to do. And then I figured out what I did want to do, So sometimes that's just part of the process as well, for me anyway.
I don't think it's that far different for everybody, is that, you'll look at most people, if anybody's gone to a hair show and they've seen some work on stage, avant-garde work or whatever, forget that 85% of the time that's in there is you put into research, and half of it is stuff finding out how whatever you want to create that's new, it doesn't just materialize. You have to figure out how to do it, and there's a lot of failures that happen in there beforehand. So, with that in mind, I know once you've got sort of that, it's always like sort of it's never an 8.5 by 11 glossy that comes up in your brain. It's a bit more fuzz. But do you? What's the options you do for? Often you can't get somebody to do. Say, I got a great idea for a cut and a color, but you can't get a model that will do it. What do you do in that case?
Well, using wigs or wefts, and you've taught me how to make wigs, which is really fantastic. It's amazing. And so using wigs and wefts really help to, you can add them to somebody's hair, or you can, just make a whole wig for them. And then you don't have to worry about it, as long as they have a great face, because that's what I understand is the best part of the picture. That's the connection. But yeah. And, honestly, when we've done the wigs before, I often end up doing them on a flat surface. And that I find very frustrating, because I like to work in short hair, as you do. Must have gotten that from you, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, think. But working on it on short hair, I love doing patterns and everything. But patterns look good when they hang down from your, the parietal ridge lower. And when I'm trying to do a pattern, I don't have that much hair to work on. I've got 2 or 3 inches. And so my struggle with myself often is, how's it going to look when it sits on the round of the head? So you always have to, there's so many things to think of and so many things to screw up before you get to what really works as well. So,
and what do you do if you're if you're creating a look and you want it from the front or a 3/4, and for people if wondering what's a 3/4, that would be, just imagine if you're face on, it's 90 degrees, but if you turn so one eye is more looking and you're getting the nose and part of the profile, etc. If you're creating that, do you create a wig, and the whole wig is it's a full wig that you can shoot it all around, or what do you do there?
No, actually, usually the back of the wig has absolutely nothing on it. Sometimes if it's a ponytail sticking out of the other side of her head that you cannot see, you can only see the part of the wig. And, many times, yes, it would be a great idea to do the whole thing, but I'm really concentrating on one particular area. So to spend all the time on areas that you're not going to shoot is sometimes not great. Sometimes it is, because that's the part that ends up being we call it the money shot, but
and that's I think the key point there is just to remember how you're going to put your collection together, and it doesn't mean that you can't do that. It just means it's a waste of time if you're if you're doing it for a photograph and you're only getting one shot, you can't see the back. So number one, cost wise, budget wise, you're not doing it, and then you don't have to worry about money and time. So I just want to take a little jump in here and just to say, from Lori, what kind of pushes you? Like insofar as your career goes, what really pushes you, and why do you do what you do? Why do you push yourself so hard?
Well, I don't want to be bored. I think, we at Dop Dop salon where I work in New York, we call it attention deficit hairdresser disorder, is ADHD. And so I think, I don't want to do the same thing over again. Although, honestly, the older I get, I can't remember what I did before. So, so I can't remember, if I did that before or not. But it's more just doing something different all the time. If I had to do the same thing over and over and over and over again all the time, that makes me really frustrated.
And so in the evolution that you've had in your career, is there something that you wish that you wouldn't have done?
No, I don't think I like to have no regrets on things. What I wouldn't have done, like if you say, what would you do differently? I would say, I would probably change the collections. Like, you shoot them and then you're done and everybody's like, oh, they're great. And I'm like, yeah, they're okay. And then I never want to look at them again. So I would probably change them, but that's only because that's what I'm like. Good. Yes.
And in Lori's evolution, not just the your collections, is there something that you wish that you would have done that would have either elevated you quicker, something that, if you had a spark and you went, damn, if I would have done that different, I would have rose to XYZ faster, just so people listening can get what that might have been for them?
I think I would have started a lot of things earlier. I did. I volunteered for a lot of things. I was at everything. I went to everything, and I wouldn't change any of those. But many times I was just maybe following everybody or helping everybody else instead of doing for myself. And I think in that way, maybe I would have done that a little bit earlier. I might have entered NAHA and screwed up more times and just done all the things earlier. And also, I always put my hand up to do things, but I never put myself in front of everything. I kind of just put my head down, worked hard, and hoped everyone noticed. And apparently that's not what you're supposed to do. I'm finding that out.
And if you had so now we're at Lori right now that you've been to so many countries, you're on the road all the time, you're teaching at major seminars, you've done photo shoots, you've done major campaigns for companies and done hair for those campaigns. Now, if you took a look back to Lori, that young girl in Saskatchewan, not even knowing that she's going to get into hair, but knowing that not even knowing she's going to go somewhere that's great. And if you had a chance to either talk to Lori or to write her a note and just have a conversation with her about what she should do differently or what's in store, what would you say to Lori?
Don't worry. Try as many things as you can, and it'll all work out.
Beautiful. Okay, well, it's time for our rapid fire relay here. So just whatever, quick one words. If it's something that's really important, muy importante, as we say, then you can carry it on a bit further. So, what turns you on in the creative process?
The research. I actually really enjoy figuring it out.
And what stifles it?
Being told what to do.
An event or a show that you've done in the past that I always say the one, if you wish you could have went out on that one because everything you did was perfect. So I know you've had a lot of them, but first one that comes to your mind.
Oh, I'm not sure that you said
Well,
perfect, so that my brain just
you're a
went,
perfectionist, so let's just
no.
bring it down just to know some.
Bring it down. I loved doing Hair Expo in Australia. That was pretty amazing. It definitely wasn't perfect. I learned a lot of things. So many things I'd change, but it was really an experience that we did different things than I've ever done before or since on stage.
Love it. Thing in life that you dislike the most?
Doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Okay. And thing that you love the most?
Trying different things.
Okay. Most difficult time in your life?
I can't think of anything that was really difficult. Maybe you're always trying to decide where I was going to go next because I've moved a lot, to different countries and things. It was always where.
Thing you dislike most about the industry?
That I think people don't think of us as professionals, that this is my profession. This is what I do for a living. This isn't my hobby. And so many people think that they should have things for free. And I'm really figuring that out. The last while could be really wealthy now, rich, retired.
What's the thing you love the most about our industry?
The people I work with, the fact that we get to make people feel good, look good, client-wise, from an education standpoint, the fact that we can teach people about our mistakes and how to make more money and do better at their career. Yeah.
Proudest moment of your life?
Probably when I won my first NAHA, because I was able to, although I'm sure I missed a lot of people. In fact, I know I do. Sorry, Jeremy. No, maybe that was the second one. Anyway, I digress. The first time I won, I was able to thank most of the people that really helped contribute to who I am.
Yeah, because it is, even though some people, whether you like it or don't like it, or you would or wouldn't enter a competition, there is a certain amount of validation that goes along and with it. I think that, if it's anything else, just to prove to yourself that you can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, after so many years of doing hair, and I assisted many people to win those awards and things, to then be able to do it with me, it was like, it wasn't like I did have something to do with it, and I'm still relevant.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Living person that you admire the most?
Well, I'd say my mom, because, she's pretty amazing. I love, I would love to be a little more like Tracy Tognini. She's pretty amazing. And I'm very much like you, so I guess that's just a given right there.
It's just you can't grow a beard much like I can, and I can't wear my hair as quite as short as you can. So, person you wish you could meet?
I think Lucille Ball would have been really great. She was very clever, but she's very funny.
And an amazing redhead. A thing that you must have with you when you're on the road?
My corkscrew.
For always after though, correct? A month off, where would you go? What would you do?
Well, South Africa has been on my bucket list for decades now. So that would be, I think that would be great.
Love it. What's your greatest fear?
Cockroaches? Oh, no, that, not enjoying what I do.
Oh. Favorite curse word?
Fuck.
It's more of a little out of the side of the mouth thing, right? Favorite comfort food?
It doesn't always come out that way.
Yeah. I know, sometimes at me too. Favorite comfort food?
Wine.
See, operative word there was food. It is a grape, but your food.
Ice cream.
Ice cream flavor?
Jamocha almond fudge.
Jamocha?
Yes.
I have never heard of Jamocha.
Oh, I will get you some next time
What
we're
is
together.
Jamocha? What?
It's like kind of coffee chocolate flavored.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I have
yeah.
never heard of that.
We'll get some.
I will get that and have it with wine, not over top though. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be?
There should be earlier on things. I don't think that, I'm okay with it. I'll be late when I die. Patience, possibly.
Oh, yeah, me too on that one. Your most treasured possession?
My black and white furry cat sitting beside me.
Patsy.
Patsy.
Something in the industry you haven't done, but you want to?
Well, I think I'd like to do, I think about like, I'd like to do another show here or win another award or whatever, but I have done those kind of things.
Yeah.
So I'm not opposed to doing more, but I don't know. Just leaving it in a better place, I guess, than I feel like it is now.
Gotcha. If you could have one do-over in your life, what would it be?
One do-over. Nope, got nothing. Wouldn't change it.
Tomorrow, you couldn't do hair. What would you do?
Yeah. Well, since I can't cure cancer, I guess I will will have to maybe just keep making people look good. Dress them, do makeup. Yeah.
Love it. If you could have one wish for our industry, what would it be?
That hairdressers are taken seriously, that they prosper, they have maybe a retirement home, they have a retirement plan. They're valued more than as much as Oprah. How's that?
There you go. I love it. Now, Lori, I know that, you're on the road constantly, but it's if people want Lori to come in, do you do in-salon work, yes?
Oh, I love it. Yes.
Yeah.
I love going to other salons. Yes.
If somebody wanted to book you to come in to teach them color, cutting, avant-garde work, session work, whatever, how would they get a hold of you? What would they do?
I think the easiest is on my Instagram, which is Lori Zabel, LORIZABEL.
So, but they can get a hold of you, and they can also go through their distributor and get you through there as well. So,
yes.
Lori, I just want to say thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you on always. I mean, it's whether we're talking on the phone, person to person, or whatever, it's always a pleasure. And I want to thank you for giving up your time, being here with us.
Thank you for having me on this, and thank you for all that you have done for my career as well.
Oh, cheers. All the best.
Cheers.